3 days in July, 1863. Can you picture it? Over 165,000 souls clashing right here on these now peaceful Pennsylvania fields. When the smoke finally cleared, more than 50,000 were casualties, killed, wounded, or simply gone. It was a scar carved deep into the heart of American history. But some believe the battle for Gettysburg never truly ended. That all that agony, the fear, the sudden violent deaths, they left something behind. An echo, a stain, a curse. So what is it that draws nearly 1 million people here every year? Is it just the history, or could it be something more? A chilling possibility that this ground, soaked in the blood of a nation torn apart, is now America's most haunted landscape? They say that acre for acre, Gettysburg is the most haunted piece of ground in America. And tonight, we're journeying into its bloodied, haunted hills to uncover the secrets of its infamous curse. To even begin to understand the hauntings, we first have to try and comprehend the sheer horror. July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, with around 72,000 men, slammed into General George Meade's Union Army of the Potomac, which numbered roughly 94,000. The very fate of a nation hung in the balance. Just imagine the scene. The deafening roar of cannons, the non-stop crack of rifle fire, the screams of the wounded, the bugle calls completely swallowed by the awful noise of war. For 3 long days, this idyllic countryside became a vision of hell. Men fought with a ferocity born of pure desperation and conviction, often hand to hand in places that would soon earn names synonymous with death. Devil's Den, Little Round Top, the Wheat Field, the Peach Orchard, and of course, the killing fields of Pickett's Charge. The scale of suffering was almost beyond belief. By the end, casualty estimates range between 46,000 and 51,000. Over 7,000 men lay dead on the field or would soon die from their horrific wounds. Think about that. 7,000 lives snuffed out in just 72 hours. Thousands more were maimed, their bodies and minds scarred forever. The immediate aftermath, arguably just as horrific as the battle itself. Gettysburg, a small town of barely 2,400 people, was completely overwhelmed. Every church, every public building, nearly every private home became a makeshift field hospital. Floors were slippery with blood, the air thick with the stench of infection and death. Amputations were performed without anesthetic, limbs piling up outside windows. Surgeons, exhausted and overwhelmed, worked until they literally dropped. Henry Watkins, a student at Gettysburg College, which itself became a hospital, wrote that from anywhere on campus, at any time, you could hear the shrieks, prayers, and moans of the wounded and dying. For 1 whole month after the battle, the college continued to serve as a Confederate hospital and prison camp. And then there were the dead, so many dead. In the humid July heat, decomposition set in frighteningly quickly. Bodies lay scattered across the fields, bloated and often unrecognizable. Burial details worked tirelessly, but the task was just monumental. Mass graves were dug, shallow, and hastily filled. Some men were never identified, their final resting places unknown, marked only by the blood-soaked earth. It's this sheer concentration of violent death, this immense outpouring of human suffering, that many believe laid the foundation for Gettysburg's enduring curse. All that emotional trauma, the terror, the pain, and the unfinished lives, all of it seared into the very fabric of this land. It's little wonder, then, that the first reported ghostly encounter at Gettysburg didn't wait for decades or even years. It's said to have occurred during the battle itself. On the night of July 1st, as Union reinforcements from the 5th Corps marched towards the battered town, they reportedly saw a figure on horseback in the darkness. This mysterious horseman, appearing and disappearing, was described as wearing a uniform from the Revolutionary War. Many of the soldiers became convinced it was the spirit of General George Washington, America's first president, who had died back in 1799, leading them to victory. Even Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, the famed commander of the 20th Maine, later acknowledged the story, noting the profound psychological effect it had on his men, whether it was earthly or unearthly in origin. The seeds of Gettysburg's spectral reputation were sown even as the cannon still roared. More than 150 years have gone by since those bloody days, yet the echoes of the Battle of Gettysburg refuse to fade. They show up in a chilling variety of paranormal phenomena, reported by countless visitors, park rangers, historians, and local residents. It's this pervasive sense that the soldiers who fell here, and perhaps even those who survived but left a piece of themselves behind, are still very much present. One of the most common claims: sightings of full-bodied apparitions. Soldiers in both Union and Confederate uniforms are seen, often at dawn or dusk, in the very fields where they fought and died. They appear as solitary figures, sometimes as entire phantom regiments marching in formation, their ghostly drums and footsteps heard in the dead of night. Can you imagine walking those fields as twilight descends, the air growing cool, and seeing a line of spectral soldiers moving silently across the landscape, reenacting their final moments? Such sightings have been reported in numerous areas, including the fields of Pickett's Charge, the slopes of Little Round Top, and the aptly named Valley of Death. Then there are the sounds. The phantom sounds of battle are a hallmark of Gettysburg's hauntings. Visitors report hearing the sudden crack of unseen rifles, the distant boom of artillery, the mournful notes of a bugle, or the chilling rebel yell carried on the wind, especially at night. And perhaps most disturbingly, the disembodied cries of men in pain, shouts of command, and whispers that seem to come from the very ground itself. One account from a young visitor describes hearing a multitude of voices begging for help, so overwhelming it left them traumatized. Electronic disturbances are another frequently reported phenomenon, particularly in certain hotspots around the battlefield. Cameras and smartphones inexplicably malfunction. Batteries drain suddenly, even if they were fully charged, and recording equipment just fails without warning. Often, these devices start working perfectly again once the visitor leaves that specific area. Some have even reported permanent damage to their equipment. Skeptics might chalk this up to mundane causes, but for those who experience it in known haunted zones, it feels like a direct interaction with an unseen force. Photographic anomalies also add to Gettysburg's haunted reputation. Tourists will snap pictures, seeing nothing unusual through the lens, only to later discover unexplained figures, mists, or what look like faces in their photos. These images, often shared and analyzed, fuel the belief that spirits are making their presence known, caught in a fleeting moment between worlds. One particularly chilling video, though experts later debated it, appeared to show human-sized shapes moving in the darkness, with one seemingly running right through a cannon. The man who filmed it described an eerie fog isolated to one patch and a strange, ominous feeling. These aren't just isolated incidents. They form a tapestry of experiences woven over decades, shared by people from all walks of life. From seasoned paranormal investigators to unsuspecting tourists, the stories pour in year after year, reinforcing the idea that Gettysburg is a place where the veil between the living and the dead is exceptionally thin. The sheer volume of these accounts makes it difficult to dismiss them all as mere imagination or misidentification. It paints a picture of a landscape saturated with sorrow, where the past isn't just remembered, but actively and often chillingly relived. Within Gettysburg's haunted landscape, certain locations just hum with a particularly intense paranormal energy. None more so, perhaps, than the formidable rock formation known as Devil's Den. Even before the battle, this jumble of massive granite boulders strewn across the foot of Little Round Top had an ominous reputation. Local legends whispered of a giant, snake-like creature, maybe even the devil himself, living deep within its shadowy crevices, which is how the area got its sinister name. On July 2nd, 1863, the second day of the battle, and by many accounts its bloodiest, Devil's Den became an absolute slaughterhouse. Confederate sharpshooters, mostly from Alabama and Texas, used the rocks for cover, their accurate fire wreaking havoc on Union troops, especially officers, on the strategic heights of Little Round Top. Union forces counterattacked, and the fighting among these boulders was brutal, up close, and utterly terrifying. Men were shot at point-blank range, bayoneted, and crushed by artillery shells exploding against the unyielding stone. The concussive force alone was enough to kill. More than 2,000 soldiers died in the struggle for this small, rocky patch of ground. The area became, quite literally, a den of death. Today, Devil's Den is widely considered one of the most supernaturally active sites on the entire battlefield, if not in all of America. Mark Nesbitt, a former park ranger and renowned Gettysburg historian and paranormal author, has described Devil's Den as ominous on a cloudy day and just ridiculous at night, admitting it gave him the willies during after-dark security checks. The experiences reported here are as varied as they are unsettling. Perhaps the most famous phenomena linked to Devil's Den involve an almost unnatural aversion to being photographed or filmed. Countless visitors have reported their cameras and phones suddenly malfunctioning as they try to take pictures of the rocks. Batteries, even fresh ones, will inexplicably drain. Devices shut down entirely, refusing to turn back on until the visitor has moved away from the immediate area of the den. Some have even claimed their equipment was permanently damaged after trying to capture images here. One compelling theory behind this hostility towards photographers centers on a specific Confederate soldier. After the battle, a photographer named Alexander Gardner, trying to create dramatic and sellable images of the conflict, reportedly found the body of a Confederate sharpshooter. It's alleged he moved the body, posing it in various locations around Devil's Den for more impactful shots. Some believe the spirit of this soldier, disrespected in death, now harbors a particular resentment towards those trying to capture his resting place on film, causing their equipment to fail. As one Gettysburg battlefield park ranger noted, if there's a disgruntled spirit in Devil's Den that has animus toward photographers, it certainly would be this guy. But electronic disturbances aren't the only things happening. Apparitions are frequently sighted among the boulders, often described as soldiers in Texan or other Confederate attire. One recurring figure is that of a disheveled man, barefoot, wearing a floppy hat typical of some Southern troops. He's said to approach visitors, sometimes mumbling or appearing disoriented. A common account involves him saying something like, "What you are looking for is over there," pointing away from Devil's Den, and then vanishing when someone tries to speak to him or ask questions. Could this be a spectral guardian, trying to lead the living away from a place of profound sorrow or danger? The sounds of battle also echo through Devil's Den with unnerving clarity: phantom gunfire, the shouts of unseen men, and sometimes even the chilling thud of bodies falling amongst the rocks. There are also reports of tactile sensations, like the feeling of a hand grabbing an ankle, as one young woman reported while climbing on the boulders with a friend. Others experience sudden drops in temperature, inexplicable feelings of dread, or the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. The National Park Service has even had to deal with the unique challenges of this area, including discussions about restroom facilities and power lines that have sometimes involved paranormal investigators, noting that toilets strangely malfunctioned only when within the boundaries of the nearby triangular field, another highly active area. The sheer concentration of violent death, the unique, almost tomb-like geology of the place, and the weight of its grim history have combined to make Devil's Den a potent focal point for paranormal claims. It's a place where the tragedy of Gettysburg feels intensely real, where the rocks themselves seem to weep with the memory of the blood that stained them, and where the spirits of the fallen are said to be most restless, forever caught in the echo of that terrible July day. While the battlefields of Gettysburg are soaked with the spirits of soldiers, the town itself harbors its own chilling secrets, places where the sorrow and cruelty of the past have festered into a different, perhaps even more disturbing, kind of haunting. Among the most notorious of these locations is the building that once housed the Children's Orphanage, now known as the National Homestead at Gettysburg. Its story is a dark chapter that adds another disturbing layer to Gettysburg's cursed reputation. The building at 777 Baltimore Street started as a private home. Like many structures in town, it was taken over during and after the battle, serving as a makeshift hospital. Its cellar, a dark, damp space, became a holding place for the dead and dying soldiers, their agony seeping into the very stones. This grim association with death was only the beginning of further horrors. After the war, in 1866, the building was transformed into the National Soldiers' Orphans' Homestead. It was founded with the good intention of caring for children left parentless by the devastating conflict. Initially, under compassionate leadership, it likely served its purpose. However, the orphanage's history took a profoundly sinister turn with the arrival of a new headmistress, a woman named Rosa J. Carmichael. Accounts paint Rosa Carmichael as a cruel and sadistic individual who ruled the orphanage with an iron fist. Instead of providing a sanctuary for these vulnerable children, many of whom had already experienced unimaginable trauma, she subjected them to horrific abuse and neglect. Local stories and historical records suggest she tortured the children, both physically and mentally. The most infamous tales speak of a dungeon she allegedly created in the cellar, that same cellar that had once held dying soldiers. Here, it said, children were chained to the walls, locked in cages, or confined in a small, dark pit as punishment for the smallest mistake. They were reportedly beaten, starved, and forced to perform grueling labor. Some accounts even suggest that children went missing during her terrifying reign. Eventually, rumors of the mistreatment and the horrifying conditions at the orphanage began to spread throughout Gettysburg. Public outcry grew, leading to investigations that exposed the depths of Carmichael's cruelty. The orphanage was ultimately forced to close, and Rosa Carmichael reportedly fled town to escape justice, her fate somewhat shrouded in mystery. But the legacy of suffering within those walls didn't disappear with her. Today, the Gettysburg Orphanage is renowned for its intense paranormal activity, believed to be linked to the spirits of the tormented children who suffered and some say died there. Featured on paranormal television shows like Ghost Adventures and Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places, the site has drawn numerous investigators. Visitors and paranormal investigators report a host of chilling experiences. Shadowy figures, often child-sized, are frequently seen, particularly in the infamous basement. The disembodied sounds of children whispering, laughing, crying, or even calling for help have been captured on EVP recordings. People report feeling cold spots, the sensation of unseen hands touching them, sometimes described as small, cold hands, or an overwhelming sense of dread and sorrow, especially when entering the cellar. One tour guide recounted being violently pushed from behind in the cellar, as if an unseen presence desperately wanted him to leave. Toys left in the cellar by the current owners, perhaps as a gesture of remembrance, are often found to have moved inexplicably from where they were placed. Some investigators have even captured images believed to be the apparition of Rosa Carmichael herself, her oppressive spirit, perhaps also trapped within the scene of her horrific crimes, forever bound to the suffering she inflicted. The atmosphere in the cellar is described by many as crushingly dark and oppressive, a tangible weight of past misery. The haunting of the Gettysburg Orphanage serves as a grim reminder that the curse of Gettysburg isn't solely confined to its battlefields or the spirits of soldiers. It extends to the innocent victims whose lives were shattered by cruelty and neglect in the war's aftermath. Their lingering presence, some 150 years later, speaks to a trauma so profound that it continues to echo through time, making the old orphanage one of Gettysburg's most profoundly sorrowful and actively haunted locations. The sheer volume of personal experiences, historical accounts, and paranormal claims surrounding Gettysburg is just staggering. From phantom soldiers to the sorrowful cries of children, this town is steeped in stories that don't have easy explanations. So what do you think is behind these enduring legends? Is it the weight of history, the psychological impact of such immense tragedy, or something truly supernatural at play? We'd love to hear your theories and perhaps even your own unexplained encounters in places like Gettysburg. Let us know in the comments below. And if you find these explorations into the unknown compelling, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the shadows. So why Gettysburg? What is it about this small Pennsylvania town and its surrounding fields that has cemented its reputation as arguably America's most cursed and haunted ground? For over 160 years, the stories have persisted, grown, and woven themselves into local folklore and the national psyche. Paranormal researchers, historians, and eyewitnesses have offered various theories to try and explain the intensity and longevity of Gettysburg's paranormal activity. One of the biggest theories revolves around the idea of unfinished business and the sheer trauma of sudden violent death. Tens of thousands of young men had their lives brutally cut short, far from home, often without proper burials or last rites. Many died in extreme fear, pain, and confusion. According to some paranormal belief systems, such traumatic deaths can prevent a spirit from moving on, tying them to the place where they died. They might linger, replaying their final moments, searching for lost comrades, or simply existing in a state of bewildered unrest. The hastily dug mass graves and the many unidentified bodies only add to this sense of things left undone. Another widely held belief is that of emotional imprinting or residual hauntings. This theory suggests that intense emotions experienced during traumatic events, the overwhelming fear, agony, anger, despair, and even acts of bravery and sacrifice can be imprinted onto the physical environment. Like an energetic recording, these emotions become trapped within the landscape, replaying under certain conditions. The stones, the soil, the very air of Gettysburg might hold a psychic residue of the battle, showing up as the sights and sounds so many have reported. Some experts suggest a mass vibration was left behind by the tremendous emotional energy spent here. The sheer scale of the trauma in such a concentrated area is also considered a huge factor. Over 50,000 casualties in just 3 days, within a few square miles. That's an almost incomprehensible level of human suffering. Some paranormal theorists propose that such a massive and concentrated release of psychic energy can weaken the veil, or barrier, between our physical world and the spiritual realm, making paranormal occurrences more likely and more frequent. Gettysburg, in this sense, could be seen as a place where this veil was torn beyond repair. The geology of the area has also been pointed to by some researchers as a potential contributing factor, especially for sites like Devil's Den, places rich in certain types of rock, like granite and quartz, both common in Devil's Den, are sometimes theorized to have properties that can store, conduct, or even amplify psychic or paranormal energy. This is often called the stone tape theory. So the unique and imposing rock formations at Devil's Den could be acting as a natural battery or amplifier for the residual energies of the battle. Then there's the idea that some spirits simply don't realize they are dead. Death on the battlefield was often instant and shocking. One moment a soldier was alive, fighting for his life, and the next he wasn't. It's theorized that such spirits might continue to exist in a kind of half-dimension, unaware of their passing, still trying to carry out their duties or figure out what happened to them. This could explain the apparitions of soldiers still seemingly engaged in battle maneuvers. Of course, the power of collective belief and expectation can't be entirely ignored, as skeptics often point out. Gettysburg is world famous for its ghost stories. Millions visit, many specifically hoping for or expecting a paranormal experience. This heightened awareness can lead to confirmation bias, where ordinary things are misinterpreted as supernatural. However, while this might explain some claims, it doesn't fully account for the consistency and specificity of many reports, nor does it explain experiences had by those who didn't know about the site's haunted reputation, or by seasoned, skeptical investigators. Even the environmental conditions of the battlefield have been noted. For instance, there's been increased concern about air pollution and acid rain potentially affecting the many stone monuments. While this is a physical concern, it highlights the long-term interaction between the environment and the remnants of the battle. Could other, more subtle environmental factors play a role in how these alleged energies manifest or are perceived? Ultimately, it's likely a combination of these factors: the brutal history, the immense loss of life, the lasting emotional scars on the land, and perhaps even geological and psychological elements that contribute to Gettysburg's enduring reputation. The curse of Gettysburg might not be a magical hex in the traditional sense, but rather the inevitable spiritual and psychic consequence of such profound human tragedy, etched forever into its hills and fields. The passage of time has done little to lessen Gettysburg's haunted reputation. If anything, the tales have become more ingrained, more investigated, and more a part of the town's identity. Today, Gettysburg embraces its spectral side, drawing not only history buffs but also an army of paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunters, and the simply curious, all hoping to connect with its storied past and perhaps experience something inexplicable. Dozens of ghost tours operate in Gettysburg, leading brave souls through darkened streets and onto the moonlit battlefields, recounting chilling tales of ghostly encounters at infamous locations. These tours range from historical storytelling to more active paranormal investigations, where participants might use ghost hunting equipment like EMF meters, voice recorders, and thermal cameras. Companies like After Dark Investigations offer guests the chance to explore haunted locations and use such tools, aiming to let the spirits do what they want. Paranormal investigation teams, both amateur and professional, flock to Gettysburg year-round. They conduct stackouts in places like Devil's Den, the Triangular Field, the Wheat Field, and the various buildings said to be haunted, including the Children's Orphanage and historic inns like the Farnsworth House. The Farnsworth House was used as a Confederate sharpshooter's nest and is said to host at least 16 spirits, with reports of apparitions, disembodied voices, and objects moving on their own. Similarly, the Tilly Pierce House Inn is known for the ghost of a young girl and a spectral soldier. Gettysburg College, parts of which served as a field hospital, also has its share of ghostly lore, with reports of phantom moans in Penn Hall and a lady in white haunting Glatfelter Hall. Many investigators claim to have captured compelling evidence: EVPs of soldiers' voices or children's whispers, unexplained lights or mists in photographs and videos, and personal experiences of being touched, pushed, or overcome with emotion in specific locations. Susan Barton, co-founder of After Dark Investigations, recounted an instance where an EVP session seemingly captured voices, identifying both the current president and Abraham Lincoln, suggesting a sort of temporal confusion among the spirits. Another investigator with the same group, Grayson Stuber, shared a deeply personal and unsettling EVP, where a voice seemingly pleaded with him to take his cancer away, an experience that deeply affected him. Even skeptics have to acknowledge the powerful atmosphere of Gettysburg. The sheer weight of its history, the visual reminders of the battle, the cannons, the monuments, the preserved landscapes, houses still bearing bullet holes, create an environment where it's easy for the imagination to take flight. The human mind often seeks patterns and explanations, and in a place so profoundly marked by death and sorrow, it's natural to interpret ambiguous stimuli through a paranormal lens. Some suggest that many experiences can be explained by natural phenomena, psychological factors, or simply an overactive imagination fueled by all the spooky stories. For example, some ghost soldier footage has been attributed by experts to mundane causes like moisture on a windscreen. Yet, the sheer consistency of certain types of reports, across different decades and from unrelated witnesses, is harder to just brush aside. The electronic disturbances at Devil's Den, the sounds of phantom battles, the apparitions of soldiers in specific areas, these are recurring themes. The National Park Service, while officially focused on historical preservation and interpretation, is well aware of the paranormal fascination. Rangers have often been the first to hear new stories or have their own unsettling encounters. The preservation efforts themselves, aimed at restoring the battlefield to its 1863 appearance, can sometimes feel like they are also preserving the conditions for these spiritual echoes. Decisions about something as mundane as burying power lines or relocating a restroom near Devil's Den have sometimes involved discussions about disturbing historic ground or, inadvertently, impacting areas known for paranormal activity. The curse of Gettysburg, therefore, endures not just in folklore, but in an ongoing conversation between the past and the present, between history and mystery. It's a living, breathing phenomenon, continually refreshed by new experiences and new attempts to understand what truly happened here, and what continues to happen in its bloodied, haunted hills. The search for answers, whether historical or supernatural, goes on, ensuring that the spirits of Gettysburg, real or imagined, will not soon be forgotten. Gettysburg. It's a name that resonates with heroism, sacrifice, and a pivotal moment in American history. But beneath the surface of this hallowed ground lies a darker, more mysterious narrative, a story of a land soaked in tragedy, forever echoing with the spirits of the fallen. We've journeyed through its battle-scarred fields, stood before the ominous rocks of Devil's Den, and peered into the sorrowful shadows of a tormented orphanage. We've heard the tales of spectral soldiers still marching to phantom drums, of electronic equipment failing in the presence of unseen forces, and of children's whispers that linger long after their suffering should have ended. Is Gettysburg truly cursed? Perhaps the curse isn't a malevolent hex, but the indelible imprint of profound human suffering. The sheer weight of over 50,000 casualties in 3 horrific days, the fear, the pain, the sudden severing of life, has created an atmosphere, an energy that goes beyond the ordinary. It's a place where the veil between worlds feels transparent, where the echoes of the past are not just remembered, but palpably felt by so many. The theories are plentiful: residual energy, unfinished business, spirits unaware of their own passing, the very earth itself holding a memory of the bloodshed. Skeptics will rightly point to the power of suggestion and the human tendency to find patterns in the unknown. And yet, the stories persist, compelling and chilling, shared by generations of visitors who leave Gettysburg convinced they have encountered something beyond our current understanding. The true secrets of Gettysburg's bloodied, haunted hills may never be fully uncovered. The land itself seems to hold its breath, guarding the sorrow and the sacrifice of those who perished here. But one thing remains certain: Gettysburg is more than just a historical site. It is a place of profound emotional resonance, a landscape where the echoes of a monumental tragedy continue to whisper to those who are willing to listen. The spirits of Gettysburg, whether figments of our collective imagination or genuine entities caught between worlds, serve as a haunting, timeless reminder of the cost of conflict and the enduring power of the past to shape our present. The hills remain watchful, the fields remember, and the curse, in whatever form it takes, ensures that Gettysburg will forever be a place where history refuses to stay silent. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of haunted Gettysburg. If you've been captivated by these stories, please give this video a like and share it with fellow explorers of the unknown. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell for more deep dives into history's most enigmatic mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and perhaps listen closely to the whispers of the past.